Aloha.
Oh. Mm. Good to see you all. Hey.
See how we compare to the football ratings. Mm. Good
I
to
don't
see
know about
everybody. Yeah,
that.
no worries. I almost had the thought if we could have one screen just showing the game in case that would tempt people to come, but decided against it. Yeah, take the time to see who's here. Here
Yeah.
moved. And we can just get started. Mm. So finding your way into a posture of relative stillness, letting your eyes come to close, and starting to see what experiences naturally call the attention as we move gently into a more receptive quality of being, not asserting so much, but receiving, attuning as best we can to all of the happenings at the various sense doors that are alive right now. Whatever they might be, to whatever degree we notice sound, body sensations, visual impressions, the eye door, smells, tastes, the wide variety of mental, emotional experiences, thinking, imagining, restlessness, gladness, peace. We often encourage a narrowing of the field of attention to help make it more manageable, this process of trying to come closer into more nuanced, intimate relationship with our moment to moment experience. So narrowing into perhaps just the stream of sound at the ear door, not repressing or rejecting other experiences, but bringing sound to the forefront of our attunement. Noticing the fluctuation of tones and textures. Noticing the mind's tendency to name, identify, imagine, create images of what we believe we're hearing. Just seeing the difference between that and the direct receiving of the sounds themselves. It doesn't have to be a forceful shift. It can be a very subtle realigning. The present moment experiences of sounds arising and passing, changing. Not needing anything beyond their own birth, life, and death. Seeing how the mind can honor the sounds on their own terms. It may be this continues as your primary object of attention, just noticing the stream of sound, deepening our commitment to receiving, observing, learning about its nature, where the mind pushes and pulls. It's called away. It may be that something more tangible is needed to collect the attention, build a sense of continuity, concurrence in our material experience, and so we can open to sensations of the body throughout the body. Receiving them similarly, right, on their own terms, their textures, changing qualities. not needing to manipulate, add our opinions, our views, our preferences. Just receiving whatever physical sensations are directly apparent. And if this field still feels too wide, knowing we can narrow to the hands or the area around the abdomen as we notice the rising, falling sensations come with breathing. And so wherever we choose to gather the attention as a primary object, the breath, the hands, the body, sound, knowing we don't have to push, we don't have to dig. We're simply skimming the surface. There's nothing below, nothing outside of what we can directly experience right now. None of it need concern us. Just this moment of rising, this moment of sound, this moment of pressure. And when the mind arises, oh, this moment of grief, this moment of knowing, this moment of identification, and the falling of the breath, the release of tension, warmth, pressure, not anticipating, not clinging to what is gone, just attuning to this fleeting stream of experience, wherever we're observing it.
Thank you, Jesse, for your instruction. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. Mm. I was born and raised right outside of Boston, and there's a paper that I read as a kid, the Boston Globe, and um, I read it occasionally because I tend to appreciate, right close to the top of the headlines online. There's usually something very different than most news. So, um, for example, this morning, um, there was an article about the puppy bowl, and I didn't know about the puppy bowl, but it's been going on for 20 years, and it's like supposed to be sort of a something to kind of complete things with the Super Bowl for people who don't watch the Super Bowl. Um, so I wondered if anybody was going to be here today because I thought, well, some people might be watching the Super Bowl, but some people might be watching the Puppy Bowl. And what's interesting about it is that all the puppies in it are up for adoption. So it's quite a moving thing that happens. And sometimes on Super Bowl days, I don't often like to go out for a walk in my neighborhood because I'm not actually a big Super Bowl person, and often I will run into people who want to talk about it and are enthused. So I went out, and of course, one of my neighbors came out, running out, and was like, "Who are you going to root for?" And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm not really that involved, you know. And I said, "Well, who are you rooting for?" And she said, "Well, I was born and raised in San Francisco, so like, of course, I'm voting for them and rooting for them." Um, and then there was this long pause, and she said, "But however, I really love Taylor Swift. I just love Taylor Swift." And then I had to hear that for much longer than about the Super Bowl. And I said, "It sounds like you might be having a conflict like going on between the two teams." And she's like, "I have been in so much pain." She's like, "I have been suffering so much." And she was very genuine about it. And she said, "It's so painful." And she said, I just want Taylor Swift's plane to land in safety in San Francisco from Japan. I didn't even know about that, so I had to ask. But she said, "All I want is for her safety." And so I think this neighbor kind of heard herself talking for, about all the suffering and then the safety. And then she looked at me and she said, "Michelle, and then I switched, like just recently I switched to, I want everyone to be safe. I really want everybody to be safe on this planet." Uh, and it was so interesting to notice that kind of way in which no matter what, our hearts get caught in conflict, and how important the suffering is. Like, I really think that that description of how painful it was for her led her to like this place of recognizing that maybe just wishing for her Taylor Swift safety was certainly not enough. And that there's that transformation that can happen. And it in all of us. And I think that I tend to want to, either Jesse or I talk about the Brahma Viharas or loving kindness when we're close to Valentines. Um, because I mean, I'm at the place in my life where there's a lot of busyness, and I didn't even know it was Valentine's Day. And yesterday, when I was food shopping and went into the store, and it's just loaded with it, like, just you can't avoid that it's Valentine's Day, right? I'm like, oh, it's Valentine's Day, and it's all about red hearts and chocolates, and and that's great in a way, but it's also, I think, so important if we can to try to find some deeper meaning in it. Yeah, for all of us, that the how we can try to shift through all the days of our lives in this. Way in which it can be less meaningful to being more meaningful. One of the teachings with the Brahma Viharas that I've always appreciated is that when there's a presentation of what loving kindness is, right? The first one, metta, what is it? There's a need to try to bend over backwards to describe what it isn't. And so that description of the experience that seems so much like it, that that and when we describe it, it's often described as the near enemy, but it's that sense of like, these are the experiences that will often believe our love. That's because they seem so close. So that romantic love or sentimental love or attached love and when they're described, it's very easy for us to think that means they're bad or wrong or not good that's not what is being said. What's being said is that those are conditional, and that the loving kindness in the context of the divine abode, the place where we can abide and live and cultivate this place of goodness, that it is unconditional. It is without conditions. And of course, the opposite is anger, right? And so that to really see that our relationship with that first Brahma Vihara, with metta, can be something that we see can deepen and be cultivated, and so that we even have, hopefully, a lowered expectation of what we understand about it. Because if we think we know what metta is, we think we've got it nailed shut, we're not necessarily going to explore these fine lines and nuances between something that will be slightly conditional or really conditional, because we'll have to face these places, right, of conditional love in ourselves or in others. Um, there's a book I've always loved for so many years. It's called The Mother Archetype in Fairy Tales, and it was written by a woman who was a mother, had children, died quite young, and was finished off by Marie Louise von France. And she takes all these different aspects of the mother archetype, which the divine love has all these shadow sides to it. And so that what I love about it is that there isn't an idealization of the divine love. It's more that, like, what is it in us, in all of us, and how do we understand the near and far enemies within us and outside of us? So how that description that she goes through in describing divine love that's in us is really this shift out of, mostly in that book, it's mostly out of naivete, actually. And it's mostly a shift out of using our emotions, um, in her words, self-centeredly. But in my words, it would be like these unexplored emotions in us all, that we don't have a relationship of mindfulness with and Brahma Viharas, how because of that, we can be motivated to use, for example, our idea of love to express greed, hatred, and delusion, for example, because it's unexamined. We don't have that. It could be grief, it could be anger, it could be joy, but it's like the naivete is actually the unexamined emotion within us itself. So that how I will interpret that again. I love it because it's so close to that sense of what we're offering, which is if we don't have a relationship with fear, it has great power, right? So when we have an idea that we're going to get rid of all these difficult emotions because we don't want to experience them, we don't want to learn from them and get the message, right? It's so sad because they have greater and greater power rather than related to. So hence, an aspect of metta or the Brahma Viharas, an aspect of metta is having a genuine relationship of love with these emotions. So anger appears, and it's like, this is not like, oh no, this is the opposite of metta. We've got to crush it, right? Rather than, oh, I could get more of a relationship with this emotion out of great respect and care and love. So it doesn't have to overwhelm us. It doesn't have to be something we act on unconsciously. But we get the information and learn how to discern it out of great care. So that's how I would express one aspect of this metta, which is so deep and vast. But it's when we have a genuine understanding of something and that comes from the intention to understand rather than to judge. Right. And we have that automatic knee-jerk reaction to certain emotions in ourselves and others. And it's like, whoa, just this like, rather than can we pause and shift it to wanting to genuinely understand another being or genuinely understand ourselves. And then out of that intention, a genuine relationship is possible. So that's how I see the Brahma Viharas. It makes space, it allows for, out of the wisdom part of it. Of course, loving kindness is love infused with wisdom. Out of the wisdom part of it, a mature relationship is possible with anything. Love infused with wisdom. One of my favorite stories of the Buddha is very simple. And as I get older, I understand it more and more. There's a part of a sutta where the Buddha is old, well, really old, and sitting on a log with his back to the sun. And he's just letting the sun, the warmth of the sun, touch his back. Yesterday, I was watching the mother feral cat who I figure she was born around now. She's 13 now, 13 years old for a feral cat. That's old. And I was watching her stretch out with her back to the sun. It was late afternoon, and just contemplating of how universal it can be for all of us beings, that we're on this planet together, and how when we're even a little bit cool or too cold or too cool, that um, particularly, I think I've always felt that when the clouds are blocking the sun, and you'll feel the last bit of the cloud move, right? And you'll feel that warmth. And I know that, like, it's like our whole being relaxes, like watching the cat, just like everything relaxes. And um, it's not just our body, it's our mind, heart. It's like, and that's how I understand loving kindness to feel. There's something that isn't holding things back, like at bay. It's not holding things at bay. It's like the resistance melts, and there's a relationship with the attention possible with anything that appears. It doesn't have to be as intense as I'm describing. It can be lighter than that, but there is often with that sense of without conditions, the unconditional love, there's a melting. And that can be um, with resistance itself. And I think often uh, that may be one of the more interesting aspects of our lives is when most of us don't like resistance. We don't like it when we want to be with sadness, but we can't be with it, right? Or we want to understand something, or we want to be with some physical pain, or we want to be with somebody, but it's too hard, or with something that's happening in the world, and we'll feel that door shut, right? We'll just feel that no inside. Um, and I know for me, my own training is to be merciless there with myself, like that level of like, I should be able to do this, right? I should be able. I'm a meditation teacher. I should be able to do whatever it is. It's like I've been looking at this for 50 years. I should be able to be with this. And it's like, the level of poisonous disdain on top of that inability to be with something is so painful. The other day, there was an earthquake here. I don't know. It actually made the news like all over. Like I got text messages from people, "Are you okay?" It's like, wow, Hawaii, the big island. But when it first got reported, it was 6.3, but it was very okay. I'm from outside of Boston. We didn't have earthquakes. I'm not like I don't go, oh boy, an earthquake when it first starts. I just don't. I'm like, oh no, what do we do? But it was just books came off the bookshelf. It's like that the significant thing is looking out the window and seeing the cats all run away, right? But it seemed like it lasted so long. It's that sense of time shifts, and it seems like it's so long, but when you look back, it was so short. Yeah, it just, um, and I felt like it's a great window into anicca, impermanence. It's like watching your house going like, like this. It's just like, wow, it's so amazing. And later on, we get these notices if you sign up for county defense or this and that. And there was a notice that said, that it wasn't the volcano, it was because the mountain is so heavy. Now, that's what I understood out of it. I mean, it was, I kind of didn't study this report, but so this morning when I went for a walk up to look at the mountain, there's three rather significant mountains on this island, but they described it as the one that has the volcano. And I was looking at this mountain like, well, what are you gonna do? This is like the biggest mountain in the world. It's like the biggest mountain in the world, and it's like, well, obviously, it's gonna happen again sometime, right? It's not like it's gonna lose weight, right? It's it's massive. And so I was just kind of tuning into the mountain in a way I never have before, and it felt so heavy and ponderous. And this sadness started in my heart, and it felt like the sadness of the world or something. It was so intense. Hmm. Almost like the sadness of incarnation itself or becoming. It felt so powerful. And I'm bringing this up in relationship to resistance because I was like, okay, that's enough. I don't think I want to really go into this, but it was like, oh, I had such judgment of the resistance and then kind of, oh, what do you do? Okay, metta. See, the tendency for all of us is to try to get back to the object that we're resisting, right? And to make the connection happen and to make it last. I actually had been with it, but I was watching that just the conditioning to go, no, 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 you have to be with this now. And just seeing that sense of like not accepting the resistance and not respecting the sadness and having that whole drama play out, I just stopped and was like, oh, all this requires is loving kindness. And I'm not saying that this is how you spent your morning. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that I bet somewhere along the line, yesterday or the day before or today, there was resistance. That's all. And what do we do with it? Usually we squeeze out of it. The conditioning is it's slippery. Resistance is slippery, and it's not necessary to go back and get the shovel out and try to dig it out. It's much more to start um, respecting how powerful it is, how much it tries to protect us, and how if you kind of tune in, find the attunement to the resistance itself, and find the edges of it, and notice how our body feels, and just stop for a while and go, oh, okay, I can get a better relationship with you. That's love in this context. That's Valentine's Day. Or that's how I think of Valentine's Day. What are the things you don't like? Send a Valentine. This kind of Valentine. I grew up in the years in elementary school that some people got Valentines from kids and some people didn't. Boy, it was so painful. Not sure where we are. Hmm. Hmm. It's some years ago now that I was teaching in Burma at Shaswa Monastery. And someone came to help manage that hadn't managed the retreat before. And there was somebody managing the retreat that had been there before. So they were kind of helping each other the first few days, kind of navigate the opening of the retreat, which is a lot of work there. And this friend, I've known him for many, many years, had found this book at the airport that I knew, no one else knew. I knew that he was getting into this book, like, and he was getting into the book so much, he started kind of disappearing when he was needed. And so you would hear somebody say, like, is like, well, where's so and so? And I'm like, I didn't say anything for a while. I was like hoping he'd finish the book, but it was a pretty thick book, and like it was getting kind of almost not funny anymore. Like, where's so and so? And I'm like, I think maybe I'll go find him. They're like, where is he? And I'm like, I know it's okay, it's okay. And I'd go look in his kuti, and he'd be reading the book. He couldn't stop reading the book. And I was ambivalent about asking him because I finally said, can I have that book next? Am I next in line? And he's like, yeah. But I was walking away going, oh, this might be a big mistake because I could tell it was such a captivating book. It was amazing. This had to finish it. And I thought, okay, my rule is that I'm going to have to read it late at night because I actually can't disappear. I can't not show up at the sittings, interviews and stuff. But anyway, it turned out to be an incredibly powerful book. And one of the parts of it that was very, like it hit you really hard in a beautiful way, was around any time we feel betrayed by anyone or by a politician, for example, betrayed or disappointed or just like, and in the book, there's a person, Otori, that inherits the kingdom in Japan. It's a fiction. But he's young, and there's a lot of intrigue and uncles and brothers that didn't want him to inherit the kingdom. And then there's this ruthless dictator. And this young, like prince, figures he can fight this dictator. He figures he can do it and kind of gets a lot in place to do it. But this dictator sets up a whole trap for him. This is a long story, but I'm doing it as quickly as I can. He sets up a trap that is so easy to fall for that he thinks he's going to win this huge battle. And it was a bloodbath. Like so many people died that he loved and cared about, and people he didn't know, but it was massive. And at the time, I had been going through a period where I had felt quite betrayed by a whole group of people. And so Otori goes to this monastery to practice and to talk with the monk there that he really respects, this old monk, Matsuda. And at the point where Matsuda thinks he's ready to hear it, he says, you cannot be outraged when people act according to their natures. And in this case, everyone did. You should be angry with yourself for not recognizing those natures. That is what this dictator is good at and why he prevailed against you and everyone else and always will. And I really have to say this really helped me. It really felt like it changed me, just like getting like, oh my, I've been focused outside of myself with this betrayal, but actually I just was too naive. I didn't think these people that I felt cared by for and cared about would ever do this, but they did. And it's like, and to hear, okay, you should be angry at yourself for not recognizing their natures, right? And so that, I think that's so important, especially it's so important nowadays with all that we're up against. And it's so easy to not go deep with the suffering that's going on now. That's all. So I don't mean this in the level of that when abuse happens as a kid or any of the ways that, of course, we're not adult enough to have this intention to understand the nature of people. But eventually we have to when we get older. So it's more and I hope you know that I'm not saying to be angry with yourself in this way. Like that's a great quotation, but I'm not saying like let's go down the trail of self-hatred when we feel betrayed. I hope that's not the message that I'm trying to convey. I'm trying to convey that it shocked me. It shocked me enough to hear, oh, I should actually get that I could look at my naivete as a near enemy of metta. Because if we don't get what's going on the planet because we're too naive, and it doesn't help us to discern what's happening and to be motivated from a place of wisdom and love. We'll just be motivated by anger. So that's all I'm saying is that it just requires this like depth of watching people get duped. And in some ways, is that our own naivete, right? That creates our outrage. We can be outraged by behavior, right? That we want to stop, but that the behavior is happening um, is actually very predictable, sadly. And I think that, again, that like that, as the years go by, I keep seeing this as a great time to practice spiritually, right? It's like if you're here now, there's a collective karma going on. And we're meant to be able to wake up and get more and more liberated, but also cultivate more and more metta, more and more compassion, more and more empathetic joy, more and more equanimity. It's like that's the deal. In that way, we're very fortunate to be on the planet right now. Very fortunate. And I think that I know that that inclination that we see going on a lot, where there's idealization of people that actually don't deserve it, or what's the other thing I was going to say? Just that wanting to see only goodness in someone. versus finding our own goodness and holding on to that, but also understanding where there is greed, hatred, and delusion in ourselves, and realizing that we all have it. We all have it. Yeah. And so it's not to be tricked by people acting like they don't have it, yeah, or that they have it all together, no matter who it is. Hmm. And I guess I'm not meaning Valentine's Day to be heavy. I hope this doesn't sound too heavy. It's much more that sense of like when I walked into the grocery store yesterday, it's like there's such a feeling of celebrating love. And I think that it's so important for all of us who wanting that to be a deep sense of understanding what love includes exploring and getting a deeper relationship with naivete. It's hard to see it until you get disappointed in someone or ourselves. And then hopefully we lower our expectation. Yeah. I used to say years ago, often the 3-month retreat, but we'd be going along and I'm like, wisdom is lowering expectation. Wisdom is lowering expectation. Wisdom is, and you can just see how important that is, just to see it in ourselves and others. It's like you wake up, and if it's like you want the next hour to be like how it was the day before, or you want this meeting with this person to be like you want it to be, you expect it to be, or you have an agenda, and you see how that kills connection. It's so powerful to see how much we actually do it with our food. It doesn't matter. It's like just like how we dress, how we talk, it's just this how we relate to pain in the body or aging. Mm-mm. There's a there's a great Native American writer, N. Scott Momaday. I don't know if helping some of you know of him. His most famous book was Housemaid of Dawn. Uh, and he said, I have tried to keep my mind alive for the sake of learning, which is to say, for its own sake. That is my reason for doing what I do and for being who I am. And when he died recently, and a lot of the people writing in about him, different places, honoring him and his influence on them, he had a great influence on me. I had never seen that. I'd never seen that he said that. And that's what I received from him and wanted to say it because it's so meaningful. I have tried to keep my mind alive for the sake of learning, which is to say for its own sake. That's you look at the motivation, right? And you think, okay, no matter what's happening, is there something we can learn? And in the spiritual world, in our world, that's often meaning, can I see what the motivation is. Can I see, of course, there's often mixed motivation in us all. It's like a watercolor. It's not like a fixed oil painting. It's moving, it's changing. It's possible to pause and see, oh, can I be motivated out of unconditional love versus attached love? There's always that possibility of stopping and checking and to see. There's a number of things at our house that has been needing fixing by somebody who is like a handyman, knows what they're doing. And we've been waiting for this person for a long, long, long time. And some things can wait in a house, but other things can't. And this person promised after several times like this, he'd come Friday afternoon. And we've learned not to hold our breath, but he didn't come. And so this morning he called and he said, Michele, I completely forgot about you. I don't think I've ever had anyone say that to me before. It was so great. It was like he said it like 3 times. I actually really I completely forgot about you. It was so funny. And I'm like, well, does this mean like when you don't show up, like I can call and like remind you like that I'm actually on the planet? And we're actually like my sink is so plugged in my bathroom, like it's getting really bad. But it was so funny. I just gotta say, I loved it. It was just like completely, totally forgot. That's the best excuse, right? You can't come up with a better excuse. And I think there's that sense of like, mm, that opportunity that we get over and over and over and over again to make a choice there at that moment. Yeah. It's just that's the beauty of the practice. It's just over and over again, there's that place of like, oh, will you be my Valentine? And will I be my Valentine? Yeah. Just changing that whole relationship to, what is love? Like, what is it? And also, um, it's not that we don't hold ourselves and others accountable, right? Or try to hold ourselves accountable. So that it's not like you're forgetting that part at all. Um, Sometimes we really have to, when it's important, say things that need to be said, right? And hold someone or ourselves accountable for things that when the behavior is causing harm. So that we can't forget that the loving kindness, the Valentine doesn't exclude accountability. And I mean, this is a whole other talk, and I'm not going to go into it right now, but I think that sense of there's a lot going on where in my life where I have to be playing that edge of the Brahma Vihara and the holding accountable and the Brahma Vihara, the accountable. And um, I'm finding that choice, those moments of choice where I can practice one of the Brahma Viharas and then the mindfulness practice and then attempt to write or say something that's holding accountable. is becoming like a practice in itself. And that's also really um, a gift of the time I am in. And I'm seeing that sense of when mindfulness is taught as just any old attention versus attention infused with wisdom, that's where this plays in, because mindfulness is ultimately a choice of discernment. It's an attention that can discern what is skillful means in any given moment. So if it's watered down or limited to just present time awareness, and it doesn't include that, again, the map that the Buddha taught, for example, and it's like over time, one is meant to, again, over time, with patience, with great patience, which is a form of metta, cultivate all these different skillful means so that there is choice. There is choice, so that we want to just kind of dive in with some holding accountable, but it's coming out of anger. The motivation's anger versus stopping and doing whatever skillful mean comes about. Yeah. And then we say something that might bring some um, important change. Yeah. Then that is what the Buddha taught. It's discerning the information of the six sense doors, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, and discerning it with wisdom, with love. Mm. Sure. Speaking of patience, Henry David Thoreau, in the Book of Wildflowers that I have, his journal only has 5 entries for February. I think it's interesting, just for those of you in the North, 5, like he's really not very inspired by the weather. But his last entry, February 28th, 1857, at the cliff, the tower mustard, early crowfoot, and perhaps buttercup appear to have started of late. It takes several years of faithful search to learn where to look for the earliest flowers. Years of faithful search. Hmm. When Thoreau wrote a book about walking, he called it sauntering. And he treated walking as a holy pilgrimage. And it's just like his love of wildflowers, for example, and his pilgrimage to find these early flowers and the years of searching, I think then again we can see as a metaphor for our practice that it takes that kind of patience, which, as we know, is a form of metta. It's a form of loving kindness, and we see that when the Buddha talked about the end of suffering, that we can appreciate understanding why and how we suffer. And that it's good. It's good that we can be in touch with that. It's actually how we grow and change. And we see we have a choice that we can replace greed, we can replace hatred, we can replace delusion with the Brahma Viharas and the factors of awakening, and So that intention to understand rather than to judge, that it does take years of search, right? It does take this extraordinary dedication and patience. And to me, that's all part of Valentine's Day. It because it is such a practice ultimately that of love, that search really is a form of unconditional love, without conditions, without conditions, without conditions. Mm. When I decided to leave my life in northern Maine to come down to Massachusetts after 8 years there, to be closer to the meditation center there, I needed to get a job, and I found a job on the night shift. It was a night shift at this pilot program where the the mental hospital there in the city of Northampton was being shut down, but they hadn't been shut down yet. It was like a program to see if we could put people in apartments from the hospital and be accepted by the community. So I was assigned 3 men. I had no training, um, but I had just sat a 5-month retreat. And that had its blessings and curses with the night shift. And so we had to canvass all the towns around Northampton and Northampton to find a place where the people would accept this going on in this apartment place. That was a learning in itself. Um, and the staff, we would meet, our staff meetings were mostly about how can we change these men to fit more into society? Like, how can we make them become more like us, basically? And they had all been in the hospital 25 to 30 years, these 3 men. Um, I think they should have been given training, frankly, and to deal with us out in the world. But because of my perspective of like just having sat for 5 months, I found the staff meetings almost impossible and unbearable because the goals were so crazy. Like the goal was like with this one guy to get him a job at the Coke factory. He'd just been like in a hospital, like not going out for like this guy was in there for 28 years, and it was like let's get him to apply for these jobs and with no help. Like and I would raise my hand and say, I I think I would need a lot of help applying for a job at the Coke factory right now. I don't know how this guy's going to do it. Well, of course he couldn't do it, but there was this other guy that they were trying to get to go jogging. Of course, he never went jogging. I knew he wasn't going to go jogging. I mean, it was just like, and so, and the other guy, they wanted him to change out of his hospital clothes. Like that was like a lower bar than the other two, but, and maybe like learn how to cook. That was his goal. And I'm sitting there like luckily I was on the night shift, so I didn't have to deal with all this going on. Oh, God. So after a year, I decided I knew that wasn't going to be my work this lifetime. But I loved it, but I didn't like the night shift. So it was almost a year, and somebody on the staff finally, every week I'd ask if somebody would change with me with a day shift, and I never got a chance for the day shift, but I finally was on the day shift, and it was a spring warm day, and I was sitting on the front steps, and this guy that they were trying to get to learn to cook and change his clothes, which hadn't happened yet. It was a year. Oh, and I was sitting there, and I forgot to say, there was one more goal that they had with him, which he had made this wooden plaque in the shop at the hospital. It was just a square plaque, and it was painted blue, and it had little hieroglyphics on it. And one of the goals was to get him not to carry that because it looked weird, but he always carried it um, in the parking lot. So I'm sitting at the steps and I'm kind of spacing out. I'm looking at the sky and it's beautiful blue sky. And he comes back from walking with his hospital clothes on and his plaque and he sits down. And I look at the sky and then I looked at his plaque and I looked at the sky and I looked at his plaque and I was like, that's a really beautiful color blue. You painted that. I think it's the only good thing I'd done that whole year. And it wasn't, no, I'm not kidding. I think it was really amazing. And he got up, he went up into his room and he changed his clothes. He came down and he asked me if I'd teach him how to make scrambled eggs. I had no intention to try to change his behavior. I just understood something about what he loved. And I wish I could live like that every day. Mm. So I'd like to end by reading the Karaniya Metta Sutta. Here is what is worth doing. I guess I just love that beginning. Here is what is worth doing by one skilled in what is truly meaningful. Having glimpsed the place of peace, they should be capable, honest, and very upright, easy to speak to, gentle, and not thinking themselves above others, contented and easy to support, not too busy, and living lightly, tranquil in seeing and sensing and wise, not too forward, not nor greedy for patrons. And one should not do the slightest thing with which otherwise, no, sorry, with which other wise ones might find fault. Wishing, may all have ease and safety. May all beings be in a state of ease. Whatever living creatures there are, without exception, trembling or steady, long, huge or middle-sized, short, tiny, or massive, whether seen or unseen, and whether living far or near, whether in existence or coming into being. May all beings be in a state of ease. Let no one deceive another or think themselves above anyone, anywhere. Let no one wish suffering for any other out of resentment or hateful thoughts. Just as a mother would protect her own child, her only child, with her life, one should cultivate such a state of mind toward all beings without limit and toward all the universe. One should cultivate a state of mind of goodwill without limit, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, purified from enmity and hatred. Whether standing, moving, sitting, or lying, for as long as one is yet to fall to sleep, one should be steadfast in this attentiveness. This is said to be the divine abiding here and now, not fixed on a view with virtuous conduct. Perfected through clarity of vision, training away the greed for pleasures, one goes no more toward being conceived and born. The Buddha's Valentine to us. Mm. Have a good week. Good luck on Valentine's Day.